In this video, you're going to learn the Colle system, what it is, how to play it, and more importantly, you're going to learn the plans and ideas heading into the middle game so that you know what to do when the opening ends. You're going to see how a strong player used this opening to ultimately overpower their opponent and finish off the game in style. I hope you're excited. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So the Colle system looks just like this. I want you to ignore black's pieces for a second and just look at white's setup. You've got this pawn pyramid here. You've got the bishop behind it. You've got the knights connected and defending each other. You've got the queen sitting on e2 defending the bishop, and the king is castled on the king side. This is the Colle system. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the London system, you will notice it's almost the exact same thing, with the difference of the bishop, which is normally sitting on f4, is now back on c1. You actually don't develop that bishop early when you play the Colle system. Now, why would we do that? Because generally speaking, you want to develop your pieces. You don't want your pieces to be stuck. So why would you ever want to play the Colle system when you could play the London instead, right? I'm going to give you two reasons why you might consider the Colle. Number one, when you play the London and the bishop is gone, this b2 pawn actually can become a really nice target for black. It's very easy for them to bring the queen to b6 and line up on that guy. And then you have some headaches that you have to deal with. You can't just play your London and ignore it, or that you're going to get into trouble, right? So it adds a layer of complexity. When the bishop's on f4 also, it sometimes can be a target. For example, if the knight moves to h5 and starts attacking your bishop, well, now you have to make a decision. Do I move it? Do I leave it there? If I move it, where do I move it to? What's going to happen? It's kind of a target in some cases, right? So when it's on c1, you don't have any of those problems, okay? And by the way, we're not intending to leave it here forever. I'll talk about this more as we go further in the video, but this guy does come into the picture eventually, just not right away, okay? So when you play the Colle system, you set up this position. Your plan is to play e4, okay? This is the plan. You want to play e4 and open things up. And believe it or not, the Colle system looks like a very solid and kind of passive opening, which it kind of is, but the plan behind it is to actually launch a kingside attack over here. And that's why it's a lot of fun. That's why it's exciting. And it also can catch people off guard because they're not expecting a passive position like this to all of a sudden launch an attack on the king side, which you're going to see exactly how we do as we go through. Okay, so that's kind of the basic idea for the Colle system. And the nice thing about it is you can pretty much always get this set up regardless of what your opponent is going to do. It's very difficult for them to stop you. Okay, so let's see how we ended up here. You always want to start with d4 if you're going to play the Colle. Usually you're going to see something like d5 or knight f6, and then you're going to go knight f3, and then you're going to go e3. Okay, this is kind of the starting moves. And usually when you see c5 is a good time to play c3. Okay, because you want to have that extra support on d4 if they're attacking you. Okay, so c3 when you see c5, or sometimes people will play knight to c6. I usually don't like my bishop getting chased around like this, and so also when I see knight c6, you'll also want to play c3 just to keep that knight from coming in. Okay, go ahead, get your nice solid pawn pyramid there if they're putting the pressure. Okay, so that's exactly what we see in this game. Black plays c5 and white plays c3. By the way, if they do take you, you want to recapture with the e pawn, and you want to do that so that you let your bishop, which was blocked, into the game. Okay. Also, this pawn on c3 does a nice job, like I said, of keeping the knight from coming there, from the bishop from coming there and causing you problems. And so you always want to recapture this way if they do take, although not everybody does that. Okay. So c3, black plays knight f6, and here we go with bishop to d3. Now, this game, black played knight c6. I want to talk about this move. It's not a good move, but sometimes beginners struggle with it and they don't know what to do. If they push by on you, we are actually very happy. We're just going to drop our bishop back to c2. And by the way, this is another reason when we see the move c5 that we play c3, okay? Because we want, if they do push, we want to have the option to drop our bishop back here. Okay, so just to recap, imagine if I didn't play c3 here and I just played bishop d3. Now if they chase me, I can't go here, which is what I want to do, right? I have to go back this way. This is not as good because now my queen can't go there and it sort of starts messing up the plan, okay? So, but as long as you play c3, you're in good shape. If they do decide to push on you, no big deal. You just go back and then you follow the exact same plan that you're going to see, right? We bring our knight to d2, we bring our queen to e2, we castle kingside, and we play e4 when we're ready. That's it. Okay, so don't worry about c4. We're actually happy because they lose the pressure and the tension on the center and they can't really do anything at that point. Okay, so this is not really a good plan for black usually. So in this game, black plays knight to c6, white plays knight b to d2, bishop to e7, castles. Notice all of these moves are exactly what we talked about. Castles and queen to e2. Okay, black plays rook to e8. Now, this is basically the starting position. Okay, and I kind of told you what the plan was, generally speaking. You're going to push e4, start to open up the lines, and go about the attack. So what do you think white played in this position? Well, if you said e4, I totally understand why you said that, because I kind of set you up to say that. It's not the move that they played. And this is very, very important. Okay, here's what I want you to pay attention to. Just because I'm telling you these are the moves and these are the plans doesn't mean that you need to become a robot and just d4, knight f3. I don't even have to think. I just play it. No. You always have to think. This is chess, right? This is chess. You have to think. So before you play e4, even though that's the plan, you would want to ask yourself, well, what's going to happen if I do that, right? And you should have noticed that if black is smart, they're going to trade, and then they're going to trade, and they're going to just get a free pawn. Because if you take, they take you. They just get a free pawn, okay? So just to clarify that, notice 1, 2, 3 attackers once this guy is traded, which they're going to do first, okay? So now they have 3 attackers, 1, 2, 3, and you only have 2 defenders, okay? So they just win a pawn. This is not what we were trying to accomplish. We don't want to just gambit away a pawn here, right, to follow the plan. That's not the idea, okay? So what do you think white played, knowing that they want to play e4, but they can't because they're losing a pawn? What do you think they played? Well, they just actually traded the pawns and eliminated the weakness so that now they can follow through with their plan, right? Very, very logical, makes a lot of sense, simple thing. Now, a couple things about this that I want you to be aware of. Number 1, the bishop now had to move 2 times, okay? So that's kind of like wasting some of black's time, the fact that the bishop moved twice. The bishop is also no longer really going to be a great defender of the king side because it's now moved to the other side of the board. Okay, keep that in mind. Number 3, the bishop on c5 might actually become a target for white's pieces. Okay, number 4 is tied to that one. This move knight to b3 might be a nice option for white because look at that, you hit the bishop, which is now undefended. And so that's just something to keep in mind. And then number 5, notice these 3 pawns against these 2 pawns. Like if you imagine if like these pawns maybe get traded, we would have what's called a queenside majority. Okay, that's 3 pawns against 2 pawns on the queen side. Okay, and why is that important? Because if you imagine if a lot of these pieces somehow like get traded off at the end of the game, these 3 pawns can push forward against the 2. You can get a passed pawn that can be very, very dangerous. Okay, and you might say, but Nelson, if these pawns get traded, black would have 4 against 3. Couldn't they do the same thing? And the answer is yes, but it tends to be a little bit harder to do that on the king side than on the queen side. And the big reason, I think, is because the kings are here. So if black starts pushing these forward, like my king is just going to kind of be here to like gobble up the pawns, whereas black's king is not going to be able to do that over here. Okay, this is a much more advanced concept. So for beginners, intermediates watching this, don't stress about this. I'm just throwing it out there for those advanced players watching, something to keep in mind. Okay, so white captures there, and then they continue with the plan. Very, very important that you understand. You have these plans, but you always react to what your opponent is doing, and only when it's safe to do so do you continue with the plan. Okay, so here black decides to play the move e5. Now, it's important that you understand what would have happened if they take, because a lot of beginners are going to just take pawns whenever they can, right? The reason that black didn't do this and white would have been happy is because now you take with the knight. And this is kind of the whole point of the Colle system. Okay, once you play e4, if they ever take you, the knight jumps in. And notice the bishop now is unleashed into the game. And look at what we've done. All of our pieces are kind of lining up to attack on the king side. We've got the queen ready to go. Look at, it's very, very aggressive opening actually when you think about it. And it just all of a sudden kind of happens, right? You have this really solid position and then bam, you just open everything up and you get ready to attack the king. And you have to remember this, right? When you're playing the Colle, you're not playing it just to sit back and never do anything. You're playing it to start out solid and then you strike when you're ready. Okay, and that's exactly what we're going to see in this game. So that is why I think black, didn't want to take. If they take again, you're like, there's this battery which is lined up on h7. By the way, the h7 square is a very important square in the Colle. You're going to want to pay close attention and remember that one. Okay, so don't worry if they take you. You're actually pretty happy to see that jump forward with the knight, let the pieces out, and get ready to launch the attack. So black said, no, I don't think I want to do that. I'm just going to play e5, let my bishop into the game, and see what happens, which I think was a pretty nice decision. Okay, so white decides to go ahead and trade, and this is another important part of the Colle system. This bishop is one of your greatest attacking pieces on that h7 square. So what white is doing is saying, well, if you're not going to take me, I'm going to take so that I can open up the diagonal and clear the way for my pieces. Another thing that's important here is that by trading these pawns, they clear the e4 square. Okay, so if they want, they can use it for their knight or their queen maybe later if this guy moves or something. That's important because right now they can't really do anything, right? Their own pawn is in the way. Okay, so that's what's going on. You take here. Black captures with the knight. And if you would like to pause, you might be able to figure out what white plays next here. All right, if you had a chance to think about that, there's really two good moves. Knight to e4 and knight to b3 would both be fine. So if you said knight to e4, that's a fantastic move. Don't feel bad. I think I would probably have played that honestly in this position. But the person playing this game played knight to b3. By the way, this is the game. This is the author of the book, Logical Chess, that we're going through this series. He's the one playing this game, so he included one of his own games. I don't think he's like a grandmaster, but I think he's a strong, maybe 2,000, 21, 2,200 player, something like that. So he goes for knight to b3. And notice the bishop that we talked about earlier is now becoming a target, and he's able to play this move with tempo. Okay, with tempo means black has to waste time saving the bishop. They can't continue developing or go on the offensive or whatever. They're going to just lose a piece. Okay, so very nice move. And again, notice the bishop now finally comes into the game, which is part of the plan. Okay, you don't want to leave this bishop back here forever. You do want to bring it into the game at the right moment. So knight to b3, and black plays a mistake. Queen to b6. They should have just retreated the bishop. They would have been in better shape. This is a mistake, but it's not super easy to see why. So this is a great time to work on your tactics. If you would like to pause and see if you can find a nice move here for white. All right, well, if you had a chance to look at that, the move is bishop takes h7 check. Now, this is, again, remember, the h7 square. We talked about it, right? Very important square in the Colle. And this bishop takes h7 move is one that you want to keep in the back of your mind, okay? And there's a couple of reasons why you might want to play this, okay? It's also known as the Greek gift sacrifice. And usually when you play the Greek gift sacrifice, the idea is that you want to follow up with knight to g5 check and try to potentially checkmate the king if it goes back. So for example, king g8, you would jump in with the queen and you're threatening all kinds of stuff. And that's one idea. Okay. However, in this game, that's not what happened. And the reason is because if white would have tried this, black was going to go bishop e6. And notice, remember that move earlier that black played rook to e8? It's actually a very useful move in this situation because when we go here, it's not checkmate. Okay. If the rook was sitting on f8, it would be checkmate. But it's not, which means the king can escape. And when we go check, the king runs, and you say, well, we're going to get a pawn. We're chasing the king. Isn't this great? The answer is no, because number one, we lost a piece. Number two, we've opened up the files on our own king, and black says, thank you very much, attacks our queen, we run away somewhere, and then they bring the other guy over, and all of a sudden, black is the one who's going to be probably checkmating us. Look at this. Black's knight might jump in. The bishop might jump in. Black has the upper hand here, okay? So it's important that when you play this move, bishop takes h7 check, you have a clear follow-up, okay? If the rook's on f8, it's much more likely to work out in your favor after the knight and the queen come in. In this case, that was not what happened. So why did white do this? Well, you guys tell me. Why did he do that? If you had a chance to look at that, the idea is that he wanted to play queen to e4 check with the fork, get his piece back, and he's kind of opened up black's king a little bit, okay? So he got a pawn, he opened up the king, and he gets the knight, all for his bishop. Okay, so that was the idea. So whenever you're looking at a position, and somebody has an undefended piece, like this knight, which was defended there, but it's no longer defended, You always want to look for tactics involving that, especially when you have a bishop like this that's ready to go. Okay, so that was the idea. Goes for the check. He gets the piece. Also comes with a little bonus that it's attacking the bishop. Now, here's a really amazing moment in the game because the author just says, you know, bishop goes back to f8, doesn't really mention anything else about it. But Stockfish finds a crazy move, bishop to e6. Now, I want you guys to stop and think for a second. Why does white not simply win a piece by taking here with the queen? Why does that not just win a piece for white? All right, well, if you had a chance to pause and think about that, it looks like it's not defended enough. You just take it. If the queen takes me, I'm going to be happy. I just take it back. I got a free piece. Cool. But instead of the queen taking, look what Stockfish finds. Bishop takes b3. Now, the knight is no longer defending the queen because it's just got captured. We say, that's not a big deal. I'll just trade the queens first, and then I'll take back here. Wait a second. Look at that rook. You actually lose your rook. Okay? So that is Stockfish's idea, that you actually can't trade queens, or my bishop is now saved. I mean, you can if you want, but it's essentially just a trade. You get the bishop, but you lose the knight. That is what Stockfish's idea is, and you don't have a better move with your queen, because if you move your queen, well, then black just moves their bishop, right? And the game goes on. So really nice move there. The computer finds it. This person did not, and they just decided to retreat the bishop. But I just wanted to show it to you because I thought it was pretty interesting. Okay, so here we are. We've kind of opened up the king a little bit, but how do we take advantage of that as white? All right, well, if you had a chance to look at that, the move is knight to g5. Another move that you want to keep in mind when you're playing the Colle, okay? The Colle is very much a system where you try to attack along the light squares, I would say, because you've got that bishop lined up. You've got the queen on e2, which sometimes jumps up here, jumps over here. You've got the knight, which sometimes jumps to g5, right? And you're really threatening all of these light squares. So that's what you want to keep in the back of your mind when you play the Colle, okay? So knight to g5, notice it's simply attacking on f7. And black says, that's not a big deal. I'll just play bishop to e6. And if you take me, I take you, and I'm pretty happy. So what are you going to do about that? Well, what do you guys think? You're playing this game. This is what your opponent plays. How do you proceed? Well, congratulations if you said the move queen to e4. And it's, remember, just think about the themes. Think about the ideas. Think about what we're trying to do. Well, we're trying to attack these light squares and put the pressure on the king side. Okay, queen to e4 makes a lot of sense, right? Lining up here. Okay? So, and it's not an easy threat to deal with, which you're going to see in just a second. So black decides to play g6 to block off the queen. And before I tell you the move, actually, you guys just tell me, what does white play next? That's correct, queen to h4. And notice that pawn that was captured earlier by the bishop no longer can help block this queen off, right? Otherwise, you can maybe play h5 and it might be trickier for white, but now you can't. Okay, this is just checkmate. So black is already in big trouble. Okay, so they play bishop g7, which is a nice move to give the king an escape square, but unfortunately their position is still falling apart. Now, maybe a tricky move for, well, let me not say anything. What do you think white played? I mean, I already said it, but what do you think white played? All right, they just simply played bishop to e3. Remember we said we don't want to leave that bishop sit there forever. We do want it to play a role in the game, and so they decided now is the time because look at this. You can do it with the tempo on the queen. Why not, right? And if you're wondering why not go here, that move's not going away. So essentially they're trying to save it for just the right moment when it's going to have the most impact, because it's not checkmate. The king's going to still escape. So they're trying to set up their other pieces so that when they play queen h7, you get the maximum benefit from it, okay? And it would be different if black had a way to stop the queen from going there, like they're about to do something. But since they can't stop it, there's no real rush, okay? So black plays queen to a6, and there's a really nice line I wanted to show you guys. Queen to c7. If you want to pause and work on your tactics, this is a more advanced one, but it's a nice little line. I think you could probably find it if you spend enough time. If you want white to play, what's the move? All right, well, like I said, it's an advanced one, so don't feel bad if you don't see it, or if you didn't see it, but queen to h7 check now forces the king over. Then you can bring in that bishop with check. Notice the king is running out of squares, so the knight tries to block, and there's an amazing move here for white. Queen takes g6, and it's incredible because the knight is pinned, so you don't have to worry about the knight taking you. And the point is that you're deflecting this pawn away from the defense of the bishop. And by doing that, guess what? You not only get a bishop, you're also getting the queen. All right. And then look at this. It finishes off with another fork on the rooks. I mean, it's just amazing, right? This knight was like the hero here. So super nice line there. I wanted to show it to you. And I think that is why, or maybe why, Black decided, no, I don't think I want to go there with my queen. Let me find a different square. And they played queen a6. Okay. The problem with queen a6 is you walk into, wait for it, knight to c5. Okay. Now the knight comes in, the other knight comes in, and you've got some problems here. All right. So Black's position is falling apart. They play queen to c4. And now White decides to jump in with the check. The king goes to f8. And here is a good moment for you. How do you finish off the game from this position? All right, well, if you had a chance to look at that, there's actually two captures here that both lead to wins for White. And we'll start with, so if you said either of these, you're absolutely right. What was played in the game is the knight C, this knight. So I'm going to show you this one first. If the G knight takes, Black recaptures. You can actually jump in with the bishop, bishop h6. You're threatening checkmate right here. Okay, so Black has to deal with that. If they take you, what does White play? I hope you didn't say queen takes h6 because you would be missing a simple checkmate in one move. Look at this. This is an amazing checkmate, by the way. It's a very interesting mating pattern that I don't believe I've seen too often. We got the queen, the knight, and the rook's even playing a role. So that's one thing. You can't take it. If you try to defend, look at this move, queen h8, because this guy's pinned. And then it forces the king here. You take this, and then bam, checkmate on f8. So that's super nice. And I guess Black just has no moves. I mean, how else do you stop checkmate? There's just nothing else really to do. Okay. So, oh, you could try to run. That was the other thing you could do. You could try to run, but then you're just losing all your pieces and you're getting checkmate. Look at this. It's not there. It's knight takes b7. It's queen d7. It's f3, and it's checkmate over here. Okay. So that was a long one. Don't worry about it if you didn't find it. I'm just showing you because these are nice lines. Okay. So that was if you took with the G knight. What was played in the game was the C knight, and we get a little bit of a different line here. So Black decides to recapture, and now what do you think White played? Well, obviously you can't play bishop h6 anymore because the knight's in the way, but what you can do is take here, and you're now threatening checkmate with the knight and the queen, and it's not actually easy for Black to stop. They tried to play knight to d8 in the game, but if you want to pause the final move here, and Black resigned. Well, the move is knight to h7 check. There's a lot of ways you could win, but this is probably pretty simple and easy. The point is, if the king goes over here, you're simply going to take the bishop. The king now has to run, or I guess you could block with the knight, but either way, it's just a winning position for White. And if the king goes here, you could take the rook, but a better move is to play knight f6 check first. The bishop can't take you. If you go here, it's checkmate. And if you go here, it's also checkmate. Okay, so nice move there, knight h7 check, and Black simply resigned. So really, really good example of what the Colle system is all about. All right, let's just recap it for you guys. You get the setup, okay? The bishop goes on d3. You get the pawn pyramid. The knights are protecting each other. You castle kingside. You put your queen on e2. Remember, if they take you, you take with the e-pawn. If they push, you always just drop back. And your plan is to push at e4 when you're ready and then attack on the king side. Okay? In this game, White decided to trade here first, so they didn't lose a pawn, which was a great decision. Then they struck in the center. That's when they opened things up, took advantage of some of these weak pieces that Black had, and always be looking for these sacrifices, these attacks on the light squares. There's different ways you can do it, and so just keep your eyes open for that. And then you just keep attacking, right? And that's exactly what White did. Look for the tactics, bring out the other pieces when you're ready, and there you go. Okay? Hope you guys enjoyed that. This was episode 21 from a series where we're going through this book, Logical Chess. If you want to catch up, you can order this book and read it with us, or you can just watch the videos. That's totally fine too. But next time we're looking at game number 22. I'll see you guys there. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp, play smart, and take care.